I am Sarah Valeri, the CEO of Hello Clutter. I am a professional organizer and I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina. To tell you guys a little bit more about my story, I will in a moment, but in case you have no idea what a professional organizer does, I go into my clients' homes and I help them remove the excess from their lives and set up systems to help them stay organized. So help them find what they need when they need it, and then make it look very pretty in the process. But if you're craving order, an organized home or office, or just a place that you can rest and not feel so stressed, this is going to be a great talk for you. And I'd love to be able to see your faces and a little bit of your spaces. You can see mine behind me, obviously. I'm actually in my husband's space today, but would love to be able to see that. And if you guys would like to turn your camera on, but no pressure, no judgment. And if you have questions, I have the chat box pulled up, so would love to try to answer some of those as we go or towards the end as well. So feel free to send any of those through if you have any as we go. But like I said, while you're turning your cameras on, tell you a little bit more about my story and what brought me here today to talk to you guys about this. I started out my life as like a decently organized kid, nothing too crazy. I know there were times that I have definitely slept on my bed with piles of clothes on them that needed to be put away and sat around with a bunch of stuff around me that I had no idea what to do or how to organize it. So I have not always been the picture perfect. I'm organized and this is super easy for everyone to do kind of person. I've been in your shoes. I've been the person who's drowned in clutter, or even if that's you or you're just looking for a few tips, I'm definitely super excited to support you and be that hype woman that Rachel had talked about before. But it wasn't until I got a little older and I started studying education that I really focused on organization. Education was just about the only thing that I knew, so I did pursue a career in that. I was a sixth grade math teacher for 3 years, but it wasn't my students' math abilities that would be able to show if they were going to be successful. It was really whether or not they were organized. So juggling all the different courses that they're taking, homework, social lives, it's a lot to keep track of for a kid and for an adult as well. And I know that one thing I was never taught and things that kids weren't taught in school was how to organize their subjects, their assignments, everything that they have going on. And more likely than not, you probably didn't have someone to sit you down and tell you how you should organize your schoolwork, your space around you, and of course now our lives. So 3 years into teaching, I didn't jump straight into organizing from there. It did take me 2 more years after leaving that career that I even discovered being a professional organizer was an option or even a thing. And so from there, I found what I really loved helping my students do. And then now my friends and my family was something that I was really good at. So that was when I launched Hello Clutter. It was back in 2019. I started by making a website. And then now just a month ago, I did officially take my business full time and have been serving as many clients in the Raleigh area and virtual as I can. So that's what brought me to talk to you guys today. I want each of you to know that I'm here to support you in your organizing journey. I can't wait to see what transformation that you guys are able to create in your spaces and in your lives, whether that's in virtual, in person, or just if you gain some inspiration from some of my Instagram posts. I'm super excited for you and I can't wait to cheer you on in this journey. I really did start this business because I believe that everyone deserves a place to feel at rest. And in theory, it should be our homes. But now we're all working from home. We live in a society that tells us we need things to be happy, and we're afraid of letting things go. So instead, we hoard and we keep, and we tell ourselves that it's because everything is sentimental, but then in return, we drown in clutter. So I'm here to say hello to your clutter so that you can say goodbye to it. No matter where you're at on your journey, whether you're that person who's drowning in clutter and you were like so excited when you found out that they were going to offer this talk today, or if you feel pretty good and maybe you're just here for a couple extra tips, we're all in this to be able to support each other and know that you're worthy of rest, and especially your mind is craving it. So today we're going to get some tips on how to slow that mental clutter, especially when it comes to working from home. So what is clutter? I say that word a lot, and sometimes we, including myself, use the wrong words to describe what process we're in. Decluttering and organizing kind of get mixed up because they are in the same wheelhouse. So just to explain that a little bit more, clutter, to start off, is a crowded or confused mass or collection. If an item isn't adding value to your life or to your home, then that is what is considered clutter. The thing that clutter gets confused with a lot is the word mess, which is an untidy state of a place. So your house can be messy without being cluttered. We live in our homes. Our homes are meant to be messy. That proves that we're human beings and that someone does live in that space. And for example, my home gets messy sometimes, but my house is not cluttered. I only own what I need and everything has a place that it belongs. And then to move on, so the next two words, declutter and organize. So to declutter is to remove those unnecessary items from an overcrowded space. But to organize is to arrange it into a structured whole, to find order. You have to declutter before you organize. I'm going to touch on this a lot today, and you guys are going to get a handout at the end as well. And it's going to say you have to declutter first. That's always what you have to do first. But having organized clutter is never going to help you, right? So that's why we have to get rid of all of the excess stuff that's in the way, and then we can put in that system of organization in place. Finally, mental clutter, that's anything that keeps you from being able to concentrate. It's usually caused by overstimulation or too many things that are on your plate. So when our homes are cluttered, our mind is also cluttered. Clutter is the outward expression of what you're feeling on the inside. So if you're experiencing mental clutter, you're going to see physical clutter around you as well. And on the other hand, if you're seeing physical clutter, you're probably experiencing mental clutter. It's a vicious cycle, and it will keep going deeper and deeper and deeper if we don't look for a lifeline or start figuring out what the root of the issue is. If you think your home isn't cluttered, or if you're like, clutter isn't something that I really struggle with, you can take a look at this list here. But these are all the different things that clutter could be showing up in your life as. Whether maybe you have a problem with impulse buying, or you feel stress and anxiety even when you're supposed to be relaxing in your house. It's probably because you're feeling that overstimulation and you're feeling that clutter. And it's not going to help you to have a bunch of organized bins full of stuff that you don't need, right? As much as all of the pretty baskets look nice at the end of the day, if you still have no idea where your things are, it's not going to help. So our cluttered homes are really getting in the way of that mental health. Because I know that how frustrating it is when you're looking for that one item and you just can't find it. And then chances are, when it comes to working from home, you've been feeling at least one of these three things at some point. So first, comparison, how everyone else's space looks versus your space on these Teams and Zoom calls. Maybe that's one of the reasons you didn't turn your camera on today, because you don't want to show what's going on in the background and start comparing to everybody else, right? And maybe you've been feeling overwhelmed and indecision. You just don't know where to start your day. You feel overwhelmed with all your home tasks you're dealing with. You're feeling overwhelmed with all the things you have to do for work as well. And then the other is distraction. Like, I can raise my hand and say that I have sat down at my desk to get work done, and then I see a bunch of other piles of things around that I should also be doing. So then I ignore my work and I start focusing on something else. So all of this clutter is adding and adding and piling up. And so when it comes to working, no matter where it is that you are, if you're working from your dining room table, you're working out of an office, if you're overstimulated by the space around you, you're not going to be as productive. That's just a fact. The space around you just is reminding you of that to-do list and distracting you from what you really should be focusing on. In an office, it's a little easier to do. So then when we're at home, we have to do a little bit of rearranging. So how do we get out of this clutter cycle that we're in, right? I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. The easiest way to eliminate clutter is to get rid of most of your stuff. But don't turn the video off, I promise. I can't force you to get rid of anything. We're virtual. I literally physically can't force you to get rid of anything. But what I want you to understand is that the items around you are just adding to your stress. The most important thing, that if you take away anything from this entire presentation, I want it to be this: that every single thing you own does not just take up physical space, but it also takes up mental space. You have to think about how to store it, where to store it, and then when it's time to find what it is that you need, be able to remember where it was that you decided to store it. The more items that you have, the more mental space that it's taking up, and obviously physical space as well. But the more mental space it's taking up, the more mental clutter that you have. So even if you experience the feeling where you want to sit down, get that thing done, and then you see the toys that are scattered around the room, or you see the laundry that was still sitting there that you meant to do, but then you had gotten sidetracked. That's all the mental clutter. It's going to keep building up. That never ending mental to-do list is always going to be there. And you can't be productive when you're trying to manage all the things going on. And the thing that gets confusing for some people is where you can say, well, I'm pretty organized. I have places for all of this to go, but it's not the same as letting go. You can't just take all of your things and put them in a box in a basement and make it look more organized. I guess in theory you can, right? You can, it will make it look more organized, but it's never going to be as freeing as learning to let go. You'll still be just as overwhelmed as before because all of those items are still taking up that mental space and you haven't removed anything. Holding on to items from the past is just going to make it that much more difficult in moving yourself forward. And if we aren't going to be able to let go of those, or if we do let go of some of those items, we bring space into our lives for new experiences, new relationships, and new memories. The average home has 300,000 items. And so if you think you can organize 300,000 items, that's probably going to be a little bit too much. And you probably own a lot more than you think. So organizing can just be very well planned hoarding. You have to be very careful and continue to care for the stuff that you keep. So when we talk about wanting to let go, if you're ready to get started and you're looking for how to start, you want to start off by prioritizing you and your time. When you're working from home, it feels like your time and what you're dedicating to yourself throughout the day is kind of a jumbled mess between that work and our home responsibilities. So many of my clients reach out to me when they've hit that peak of the overwhelm, and almost always their biggest concern is time and energy, is that they don't have the energy to declutter their house. I don't have the time to declutter their home, right? And I hear you. You're not the only one that feels that way. It's completely valid. And that's why I'm there to take off some of that burden. But instead of thinking about all the energy that you have to put towards this and how hard it's going to be and how the heck are you going to fit in organizing your desk in between all of the meetings that you always have, I want you to switch your mindset a little bit. I want you to think about the energy that you're going to get back when you're not worrying about all the stuff that's building up around and that need to be put away. You're going to get your mental sanity back, a little few less things that you can take off of your list. You're going to get back much more time, much more energy, and ultimately happiness. And if you don't think you're going to get time back, the average person spends 1 hour every day trying to find an item that they know they own, but they can't find. 1 hour a day. That's a lot of time. And when we're talking about work, according to entrepreneur.com, they did a study and they found that the average worker can waste up to $4,800 of their company's time just by trying to find something that they needed for work, whether that be a document or like a pesky piece of paper that somehow eluded themselves from their desk space. So an hour of time we're spending looking for these things, we're wasting our time, we're wasting our money. And then we think about, well, what are we doing with the rest of our time? If an hour of it in a day is spent looking for something, you only have 24 hours in a day, you're working, it can be really hard when we're only thinking about it in a day's time period. So I want to think about, instead of looking at 24 hours in a day to try to get all of these things done, let's look at a week. Usually we plan out our weeks in advance. We plan out our weeks, what we're going to be doing for work, what we might be doing for our social calendars. So let's look at an entire week. Laura Vanderkam has a book on this. Honestly, it's amazing if you guys would want to look into it. It's called 168 Hours. You have more time than you think. It just gives a little different perspective from what we typically hear. So there are 168 hours in a week. Let's say you work for 40 hours, right? Pretty standard. And let's hope that we all are getting at least 8 hours of sleep a night. That would take up 56 hours. So that's leaving us 72 hours with our time for the rest of that week. And I know what some of you might say, well, I don't work only 40 hours, especially working from home. Sometimes those lines get blurred. So let's say you're working 50 hours a week instead. That means you still have 62 hours of free time that you have. If you're working 60 hours, you still have 52 hours in your week left over. And of course, the more hours that you're working, you have to be a little bit more creative with the time that you have that are extra for you. But by not being intentional with what we're doing with our time, we really end up losing it. chunks of time just disappear because we're not actively planning. And the next thing you know, Netflix is asking if you're still watching, right? Those hours will just start to trickle away. So if you're intentional with your time, if you prioritize yourself and what's important to you and what's going to take away from your stress, then you can feel a little bit more revitalized during your work time and truly be able to rest in those extra hours that you have. If you put the work and the time up front into decluttering and organizing, then you're going to get that time and energy back, and it's so worth it. The next thing that you want to do, so prioritize yourself, prioritize your time, and then I want you to set up boundaries. There are both physical and mental boundaries that you really need to set, but I really want to hone in more on the physical boundaries to start off, since we're working from home, and this was the biggest complaint that I heard from individuals when we all first started, was I don't have, a physical office that I can move to. So how do I set up these boundaries between working from home and working or just having, regular home life time? So physical boundaries, they're all for our spaces. So I want to talk about what's something called a container rule. Your home is a container, right? It can only hold a certain number of items before it really starts to feel cluttered. We need to do this with each space in our home as well. And then we set boundaries either in the form of like organizing bins. So then that shows us whatever fits inside of this bin, then that's what I can keep. And then some people prefer, you can also do it based off of the number of items that you own. Whenever you set those boundaries and you say, I'm only going to allow myself to own, 6 pairs of pants or whatever it is that it might be, depending on what space you're organizing. It's going to prevent you from overspending and bringing in items that aren't going to have a space. And it will help maintaining an organized space a lot more reasonable when you know this is what I have and this is all that I have space for. When it comes to working from home, if you're working out of that dining room table or another space that you had to morph into an office area, having those physical boundaries set where either you can step out or at least put away your work at the end of the day so you don't constantly see it every time you're walking by, that can be crucial for maintaining a work-life balance. On the mental side, when working from home with a partner, roommate, kids, even pets, you probably know how even much more difficult it's been to restructure your home and have those boundaries set. So if we can effectively communicate what we need from those around us, especially when it comes to our spaces, so that it can help them honor your mental and physical boundaries that you need to have set. These are big conversations to have. It doesn't happen overnight, and you guys might have been having them from a year ago, and it still hasn't happened. So continue to have those conversations and talk about those boundaries that you need to have set, or maybe it's time to initially have that. Maybe you've been sitting here for a year and you're stressed and you want these boundaries so badly, but you haven't known how to bring that up. Now it's time, right? And even an emotional boundary can include calling your mom and telling her ahead of time that you don't need new books for your office for your birthday, that you have plenty of books that you still haven't read from the previous birthdays, right? That's reinforcing a physical boundary you might have set, but it has that emotional tax that comes with having to like donate items that you've been gifted and all the extra things that come up when it comes to letting our things go. So I want you to set those boundaries, prioritize your time, and then finally ask. I kind of just touched on this a little bit, whether you're asking for a spouse's help, a partner, your roommate, whoever it is that's around you that you need support with, whether they live in your home or not. Chances are people give you gifts or you're doing life with someone, and you need to ask for help. Help take off some of that mental load, whether that's asking for one thing to be taken off of your plate that you need help with folding the laundry. So it's one thing you can check off of your list and not have fill up on that mental clutter. Everybody needs to have a team, a support system of some sort. And if you don't have anyone, that's where I come into play, right? I will be there to be that hype woman for you and take something off of your plate. You mentally need someone to be able to support you. Physically, you need someone to support you. It's almost impossible to do everything by yourself, and it's okay to ask for help. You're worthy of asking for help. And if you show your loved ones that grace and have these conversations, it will help start moving towards that solution that you guys can create together. Okay. So I want you to prioritize your time, set those boundaries, ask for help, go through all of those items. Like I said at the beginning, we're going to be sending over a PDF of how you can organize your space and take you step by step to the different things that you might have in your office space. So I want you guys to take a look at that as whenever you have a chance, and just in between meetings, whether it's 5 minutes every day that you can dedicate towards this, those few things that you can do that will help take off a few more things from your plate, it's really going to help. And I'm so thrilled that I got to be here with you guys. Thank you guys so much for having me.